Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Okay, so what I want to know is who's irreverent in this show, because that's what it's touted at the beginning of the show.
Irreverent?
Irreverent. Who's irreverent? Is it you or is it me?
I think it's talking about the station content in general. I don't feel very irreverent.
I don't feel irreverent.
I mean,
Actually,
you're
I do
sometimes
occasionally.
irreverent.
Well, I mean, maybe moody. I don't know about
I'm
irreverent.
very
irreverent.
very contained.
Contained?
And diplomatic.
Well, at the moment, yeah. I think
I'm
you
the
are.
solution to many problems socially.
Oh, dear. I think I could pull out a few people that might argue that fact.
Well, they're all crazy.
I see. Of course they are.
Crazy people would have a problem with me, but sane people love me.
Sane people do love you. The sane people, I don't know many of them.
This show's already great for me. This show's fantastic for myself.
So how's the week been?
For me, it's been good. How about yourself?
Oh, it's been very hectic doing this funding.
You look like you are in the middle of something very intense.
Yeah,
I have to say.
Yeah, I am. It's a lot of funding.
You commandeered the office next door, and I didn't think we were going to get you in time to start the show.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to lawyers and stuff like that.
Lawyers involved in a good way? Are these entertainment lawyers?
No, these are entertainment lawyers. No, entertainment lawyers regarding a deal we're doing, which is very tricky at the moment, and you just don't want to lose your money or anybody else's money type of in any deal. Even though people promise you everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, what can you tell us about the deal? Nothing? Probably?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Classified. But we
Zero.
can't say a deal is in the works.
Yeah.
A deal is being discussed.
Yeah, it's a lot of I think if I had $1 for every minute I spent on the phone for this, I probably would be a millionaire at this particular moment in time.
That's one of the things people don't always calculate into their deal making is the amount of time/investment that goes into actually getting a deal done before people can collect a check out of it.
Correct. Exactly. And that's the same thing as making a movie. If you make a movie, basically, it's 1 million man-hours to actually put it on the screen. It takes an hour and a half to watch it.
Yeah, I heard from a high-level producer over at Warner Brothers once that said if you broke down every hour he spent on a deal and divided it by the profit in the deal itself, he made about $25 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's really pleasant. Anyway, so we're on our last week of impact on children in the entertainment and media world. I mean, we've talked at Tiwale. We had the Tiwale show on air last week,
which was an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. We also had
we actually got a new hashtag trending out of that interview.
Really, which was that?
It was Red Skull.
Red Skull. Yeah, I'm sure that would be a Red Skull.
So let me ask Red Skull.
Red Skull, are you there?
Red Skull, are you there? I actually spoke to Red Skull last night.
Did you?
Enough, yeah.
Did he breathe heavily? Because you could hear him talking in the mouth.
Yeah, Red Skull is a teacher, so I was planning a field trip for some of his kids as a thank you.
Yeah. Well, we also had another of our favorite guests at Tiwale that weekend, who wasn't actually in that interview, and actually
he should have been.
He should have been. No, he shouldn't, because actually I want to hear him separate in this particular, because we're going to actually bring a few things. Rick Mora, good morning, Rick.
Good morning, my team, my peeps.
My peeps.
This guy,
my peeps.
Fantastic personality as always, Rick. We miss you around here.
Hey, it's never a dull moment with you guys.
Yes, I mean,
not with you involved anyway.
Yeah, Rick is very, very animated. Is that the word I would use?
There were some great photos from you at TiwareCon with Darth Vader and other people you were talking to.
I had a blast. Tiwale was not only a beautiful event that we were able to go and support and help children in need, but it was also a very interesting experience for me to see the farmland of America, of California. We're the dairy capital of the world.
It is a very nice drive. And speaking from someone who does not like to drive, it's a very nice drive. And you're right. It is very...
Don't take a left when you should take a right.
Right, exactly. You end up in the wrong place. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And you hope that you're there during the day, because at night there's no light.
It's definitely Texas Chainsaw Massacre if you're there after dark.
You're ready to rumble
in some of those barns
with a bunch of teats.
You can go indefinitely on roads with no lights and stuff. And it was interesting. Just a little agricultural point, real quick. Did you notice on the side of the orchards and a lot of the farms they used depots of beehives.
I did know. Thank you for bringing that up, because I did notice
stacks of them,
stacks of beehives, and I was wondering,
are
those beehives? So I'm glad that you brought that
up. So
up.
Monsanto hasn't killed all of them yet.
I love that. I also had a chance to see, I guess I haven't seen before, the planes that fly really low over the crops.
The crop dusters.
Yeah. I mean, these are things in California. I live at the beach.
I'm a little lost. That's the thing.
The only planes you see at the beach are calling a banner that says,
that says
come to Toggles next week.
Coppertone wants to see you at Duke's.
Joe's Crab Shack. Joe's Crab Shack owns that beach. But I don't get to see crop dusters. I mean, it was a whole experience.
So okay, for those of you out there listening, we have Rick Mora in the studio. Now, I want to actually. You're born. Is it Yaqui?
Yaqui.
Okay, Yaqui and Apache of Mexican Indian descent, correct? Okay, I want to make sure I get that right.
Last I checked.
Last you checked. You were born in a land with no electricity, no plumbing, a wood-burning stove, and a mother who possessed the powers of Mother Earth.
I love that.
Do you like that?
I always say that she can grow corn from a rock.
That's
real. Right?
That's incredible.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's real.
So you obtained a bachelor's degree from California State University, Northridge, in communication. That's what we talked about before regarding Northridge. Acting and modelling soon followed, and you were discovered by legendary male supermodel agent Omar Alberto. Is it Alberto?
It
is Alberto.
And he is very much Omar Alberto.
I had an agent like that once. Yeah, his name was Luigi.
Yeah, and he was very much like that.
Very much like
we have a pretty long, extensive career now in this business, and modeling was a part of had crossed my path, and I'm sure that many have come to you at some point in your career and said, let's rock with this.
Right.
So I was very blessed to have this wonderful agent who was my best friend was already with him. And he was also the agent to Tyson Beckford. He was also the agent to Eric Schenkenberg, Marcus Schenkenberg. I mean, this guy was big time, but he didn't have a native. He said, "Look, man, there's a place for a warrior out there. I'm not making any promises.
For a warrior,
but there's a place out there for you. If you're willing to give it a run."
Your first thing was actually on Twilight as native. What was it? Jacob Black's great grandfather, Ephraim Black.
I gotta say that Twilight has definitely blessed my life. I got my SAG card from Twilight. So I mean, when you cross that bridge, you say, "Wow,
that is true.
I am now a union where now I have to pay dues and work less."
And I see you worked with a friend of mine, Michael Bean, on Yellow Rock.
I did. Michael Bean was the big wig there on that Western.
I've worked with Michael before. Years and years ago, we worked together, and I always run into him. It's always fun to run into him.
Definitely.
Actually, that film received 18 awards and acquired worldwide distribution in 2013. Right?
It's a little monster. It was a little train that could.
Isn't it funny when those little ones come out of there? I love that.
It was a blessing. I think it was the actual only Western that came out with a Native American content at all in it, so it was definitely a jewel. It still has wings. It's still flying around.
Right,
still flying around.
Well, you've done a lot of stuff. You just finished the film, or you finished the film with Sean Astin, Emily Watson, and Kevin James.
Little boy, right? Coming out next month.
Right, yeah. So you finished that one, which is awesome.
It's a big one.
You've done a lot of stuff, but also the other things you do. Your charities include children and cultural identification, the importance of art and music in education system, and children with autism. So I wanted to talk to you. We did do a little interview regarding this, but I actually want to bring it on air because I know you support the Heartfelt Foundation, which is a volunteer-driven international service organisation which helps those in need and loves doing. You love doing events for kids. I know that, and you support Hounds for Heroes. A nationally non-profit dedicated to lift the spirits and morale of our active, wounded and veteran military troops worldwide and to increase community awareness. So you're pretty,
diversified?
Diversified, yeah. But the thing that interests us also in this particular show is we're dealing with the media and its influence on our kids. I mean, earlier this month we talked about animated movies and how some recurrent themes may have negative impact on children. You got violence, racial and gender stereotypes, social status, and the princess effect. We've done a lot of those different ones. One area we didn't mention was historical inaccuracies, which I think is, and these are portrayed in their movies. We see Braveheart, everybody's screaming about Braveheart, like, oh my God, he wouldn't have had those blue things on his face at that time. And you kind of, in a sense, some people go, well, who cares? It's a good movie. It did bring that point forward. But one of the most obvious, from your point of view, I think, is Disney's Pocahontas, which has been a travesty on history of Native American of the Native American genocide. I mean, what's your feeling about about that particular thing and how that reflects on
You say what's the feeling, and we always make this trade-off of whether it's valuable to have a culture represented at all, or do we just not touch the subject and not touch the culture, and we go unspoken and unrecognized. It's a 50-50 on that one. I'm going to say that the true story of Pocahontas is by no means entertainment for children. So the reality is that they turned it into a cartoon to entertain, children is, I think, an irony of our society. I think that we always are turning things from, one perspective to another in an element of profit, and they weren't exactly making Pocahontas for social awareness. It was just, they tried to touch upon the children's element of the story. In reality, there is no children's element to the story. The conquerors come in, they kill, rape, pillage, and they, one girl, she leads the forefront to, build a bridge between two cultures, and the reality is that it's a cartoon. And
you've got the I think the thing that affected people the most was the end. The settlers becoming friends with the natives, and everyone lives happily ever after, which I think is a Disney.
It's their MO. It's their every story.
In reality, is that the right sort of thing you tell? You let children believe that everybody lives happily ever after, or do you actually do something that affects that says to them maybe we should have looked at things a little differently?
Children are pre-programmed from the third grade when they're introduced to the fact that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Well, right there, boom, we've already failed.
Aren't we past that, though? Are schools still teaching that?
They're still teaching it. And hopefully you have now a more socially sensitive and conscious teaching environment where the teachers take the responsibility to add a little bit more historical perspective to that story, because the reality is that we're teaching the kids still that our world was discovered by Europeans, when in reality we were already here, and there's no argument about it.
That is, from your perspective, a correct argument, but I think they're using the term discovery as a discovery to the European culture. The Europeans have found something, not necessarily that it wasn't there prior to that. The word discovery is the wrong word.
It's the wrong word
for the situation, because it's the act of them finding that something that they didn't think was there, and the only verb they have for it is discovery. But you're right.
But they teach it they teach it. It's a whole chapter. It's a whole part of the learning process. How Christopher Columbus discovered America, and that's all the kids know.
So would you suggest that they change the verbiage of that? Because there's no changing the historical context.
No.
Columbus was probably, not only did he land in the Caribbean, but he was I would say even without him, you would have had essentially a whole wave of apocalyptic conquerors coming through the New World, with the exception, and maybe including the Vikings 800 years earlier, who just don't have a historical record of their time in the quote-unquote New World.
Very relevant.
And I doubt the Vikings were all that awesome as visitors to the New World, to be honest.
No, I mean, you look at the Viking series, what they were trying to do through North Europe now. I mean,
Vikings weren't really known for,
being cuddly-muddly.
Yeah. No. And then, the natives of that era were the Mongols. Mongolia had a huge impact on migration also. So as the Vikings were coming, the Mongols were here coming as well in the same directions, I want to say, because Vikings weren't the only ones.
Wasn't it before, from what I remember from my history, is that up through Alaska and that part, the lands were connected at that time. Correct. And that's where the migration came into the United States originally.
Correct.
Okay, so
yes, you were on it.
I was right in my history class.
You were. You did go study that day. So bringing it back, we come to this position of what story do we tell? How do we tell it? What is, and what is right and what is wrong? I want to say that in retrospect, it brought awareness to the Native American culture. That's a positive thing.
Are we talking Pocahontas or Columbus Day?
Let's not go there. But I'm just saying Pocahontas. The identification of a culture, the representation of a culture, at least it's relevant. At least it is there to discuss. Had they not made any stories that are Native American, then we would feel left out. We would feel, why aren't they telling our story? And
What are some good Native American stories? Have you seen any?
Well, see, that's an interesting thing, which one of the things Disney hasn't done, or any other but has done. I mean, they've done some of all the older. I mean, I used to watch them when I was a kid, the westerns, with the Indians with the bad guys, and in actual fact, it was totally the other way around. General Custer was actually not exactly a pleasant person, and he's revered as being, so when you're dealing with that, I mean, obviously. Today, times have changed from 50 years ago when that mindset was very different to what we're dealing with today. We have a much larger viewership on knowledge through the internet, through now TV and film, etc. And it's a much broader spectrum we're able to give to people, but are we still delivering the wrong message in a lot of films? Are we delivering inaccuracies, or do you think it's much more true to what it should have been?
I think that there's much more effort being placed in being accurate and authentic. I think that because of this ability to have so much access to information, that we are kind of socially conscious now and responsible for telling a story. So it is a better climate. I will say that.
I agree with that.
It is a better climate.
It's not a perfect climate, but it's a much improved climate.
And there now is a huge recognition and acknowledgement of particular cultures and particular stories now.
What movies do you think have gotten it close to right?
Jeez.
What about Daniel Day-Lewis and
The Last Mohicans?
Last Mohicans. I mean, I love that era. I mean, personally, I love. But was that more historically correct in a sense? I know it was totally
Well, actually, that movie's based in fact.
Yeah, no. Last of the Mohicans was a very wonderful representation of the clash of culture and the fusion of the idea of expansion.
Yeah,
right.
The backdrop, the fort, and the battles in that were real.
Yeah, and that had Russell Means in it. Our great, one of our
who's actually really good.
Yes, that's true.
He's really good at
it in the world of of consciousness. You don't mess with.
I work with Wes Studi.
Wes is a great guy.
Both of them are excellent.
Wes Studi was worked on Highlander, so I mean he was in that as well.
Yeah. No, Wes is awesome too. We have a responsibility now, and I think that it is having an impact on all filmmakers and the elements that are being delivered, because it's much more difficult to push someone's personal agenda on a historical perspective, because there's so much information now on everything. So I think it's, like I said, it's geared towards a more positive reflection of who we are and who I think who every culture is, because it's not just my culture that's being underrepresented. I mean, Yeah,
there are a lot of other. I mean, there has been a drastic change, although, there are certain opinions, and I think sometimes when you actually have groups that are, when you have clubs or you have certain people, I mean, in England now, I feel that England is probably going to have a very sharp awakening in another 20, 30 years, because there's a lot of, something like that, because there's a lot of segregated areas now of different religious or cultural, and the idea is when you come into a country, if you came into my house, I would expect you to respect my views because you're coming into the place that I live in, my space. But what ends up happening, and it happened in America a lot of the time, the Italians came in and they kept a group. Now they're more, or the Polish or the Irish, they all came in and had because they felt safety in numbers in a sense.
Yes.
But it also created conflict until the time came when you were actually able to integrate into that society.
Yes.
Then everybody became one. And I think that's part of the issue. It is getting there, but we still have a long way to go to actually change a lot of opinions that are still based in that
Rooted
opinion,
old school.
50, which is still being taught in a lot of places in America and the world today.
It's because the world's still being run by those people. And that's the thing.
True.
A bunch of very old people are still having a huge say and a part in the way that government's structured, policies are designed. I mean, we have 80-year-old congressmen that are not leaving their seats.
Which is ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous. A waste of money. There are 80-year-old congressmen that are literally sitting there holding a seat and not giving him up, because if they give up that seat, it's going to lean towards the favor of one side, and if they give that seat, it's going to lean towards the favor of another side.
Yeah, right.
They're like literally just sitting there, old and dying.
That's why we have our
and we have no change. We have no policy change.
Yeah.
We have no adjustment in the way that we should advance as a society today.
because thinking is stayed on that same level. It's not changed.
It's glued there like cement.
There's a good friend of mine that's going through some trials at the moment. Cancer, and he's going through a lot of the traditional methods, but he's open enough to go and open some of the other methods. And I know personally people who have veered away from those old ways,
yes,
those ways that were because it made money for the pharmaceutical industries or the medical industries, and they veered away from it and are cured of it.
Yes.
Because, if they went the other version, there's not as much money to make in that, but the actual cure is there. So I think you have to be open to these other things that go out there.
You have to be open altogether when you're dealing with a disease, a debilitating disease. You have to be way on top of yourself.
Yeah. We've talked about content, right? So we've talked about, so history's giving us a different view. We're trying to create that, but then we also have to deal with the business aspect of it, which brings me to one of our other things, which is marketing. Now, we talked about marketing. We briefly touched on it a couple of weeks ago when we talked about how, and we actually talked about Tiwale as well, when you actually have beer commercials at football games, football games is usually teenagers or kids.
It's the biggest sponsor.
It's their biggest sponsor, right?
Correct.
But there are so many other marketing issues that you deal with, because let's look. There's two situations, and I've got them written here, which Bev will put up for me. It says you got a 4-year-old gets to school, starts crying. She realizes her lunch is packed in a generic plastic bag, not the usual Disney princess lunchbox, or a lunchbox of her. It doesn't have to be Disney; it could be one that's.
Yeah.
So she, and that's the one she loves. And a friend tells her she won't be able to sit at the princess table because it's only for girls with princess lunches. Ooh. Right? So then a fourth grader.
Harsh.
Trust me, they are. Trust me, I've got a daughter. A fourth grader arrives home from school, all excited. He has a book. He has a book it certificate from Pizza Hut because his mother signed the form showing that he's met the reading at home goal his teacher set for him. He pleads with his mother to take him to Pizza Hut for dinner that night. Now, so what you're doing is you're gearing something for the kid to go towards a specific. You're marketing it directly towards kids.
Well,
but is
you
that
know who the biggest criminal is of that?
No, who is
McDonald's.
Oh, well, yeah.
Okay, now they stopped. They stopped doing the movie on box toy.
Well, you know campaign. What's amazing? We had that in the Tiwale Con. Rico Ross said exactly the same thing. He said, now until we actually speak about it and it's voiced, these opinions don't gather support and change policy that you're talking about until we actually speak about them. And McDonald's now has changed that.
They have changed it.
And McDonald's, for a long time now, God bless them, they actually have McDonald's McDonald House, which is a great organisation. So I think there are, but it does allow us to voice opinions.
McDonald's House and also having a billion-dollar merchandising franchise, I mean, even they flush their own morals down the toilet sometimes because the money starts talking and people start getting crazy about it. That's
my issue. So should we discuss this a little bit in a sense? Should there be a governing body within each different corporation that says, okay, I know this is going to make us money, but is there a better way to actually put it towards our kids? Because our kids are going, especially ones that market towards kids, because it affects what they wear, what they eat, what they play, who they play with.
Exactly.
It shapes everything, what they learn. So, in a sense, is that a solution towards this?
Well, the solution is that what happens is that when you don't set guidelines, there's always going to be those that push the boundaries. Guidelines are always needed. We never know where they're going to be needed until we experience the backlash or the fallout. And now we've seen the damage that it's had on the effect of children and how they want and desire to be specific things and specific people. So when you don't have a structured set of rules, then it gets crazy. So like we touched upon, McDonald's went back, said, okay, we can't be doing this anymore. So they initiated that as a good decision to structure the rules. So now everybody else that does that concept also kind of doesn't do it anymore either. I think Burger King was doing it for a little while. They don't do it either. So they're starting to set their own rules, I think, but we're responsible for that. We should always be setting.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? The parents or the people are supposed to be.
Yes.
But in a sense, you have corporations that run this country. It's not the government. It's corporations. They run this country.
They do.
And in a sense, they have to be made aware that the general public actually wants a slightly different thing for their children. You know, you've got violent movies like Spider-Man or Transformers. They market toys to promote violence.
100%.
And that's what they do. It's you know, my kid goes around like,
yes, billion-dollar industry.
And so I'm like, whoa, you know, because he's seen what that thing promotes.
And the reality is that it's you can shelter and govern your child as much as you want, and you could be overbearing, but it's not going to change the fact that what that child learns from the friends that he goes to school with, or the people that, I mean, because not everybody's governing their children that way. We have kids that are literally driven by television and
totally.
They live off of it.
Absolutely.
But
they're also driven by brand marketing
and brand marketing.
Exactly. Brand licensed marketing.
Exactly.
If you look at the statistics, brand licensed toys accounted for $29.3 billion in 2013.
Look, Adrian, I'm the first one to step up and say I want the Rick Mora doll to be in every household. Because you
can only stroke that one.
You can comb my hair. You can put me on a horse. I want to be there. I want a piece of that cheddar.
But doesn't that also mean though that when you're going into a situation, you know, you go into a toy store and that you've got all this range of toys for your kids to look at. I mean, you as a parent or as a brother or as an uncle or whatever should be a little bit more mindful as to which way you're steering your kids to go and play with.
You would be imagining that they actually put specific toys at certain levels at heights where those specific age group of children are drawn to, where they don't have to look up or down. I mean, it's even marketing like the way the market. You go to the market and you have certain cereals on certain rows. The toy stores do the same thing. They put the specific toys geared towards the height of that child at eye level, so they can reach it, touch it. I mean, they're manipulating you from the minute you walk into the door.
You know, I've got to tell you a story. It's a funny story. It's slightly off topic, but talking about eye level.
Yeah.
My son and my daughter, I took them into Disney. They were acting up one day. We went just across the street, went into the local mall, and my son runs into the Disney store, as does my daughter. My daughter immediately plonks herself in front of Frozen,
yep,
of course. And I'm like, okay, she's there. And I turn around and I see my son. Literally, as I turn him, I see this was like a year ago. He was only a year and a half, 2 years, about nearly 2. He literally is bolting out the door. He grabs 2 T-shirts off the rack. Suddenly, goes off as he bolts out the door. I'm like, oh my God, come back here! As I go after him, he takes the 2 T-shirts and throws them into the fountain. Oh, no. So now I'm going after him. I'm pulling out 2 soaking T-shirts, grabbing him, looking back behind me. With my other daughter's now standing with the 2 security guards and the shop assistant, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I said, I want me to pay for. She goes, no, it's okay. Now, obviously, this was at his height.
Yes.
Talking about the level. But then I said, get back down the hallway. So they both head off. My daughter heads off in front of him. I'm chasing behind them, and suddenly my son, as we almost get to the restaurant, takes a quick 90-degree turn right into the beauty supply store, runs straight down the aisle, looks at the bottles. There's all the bottles eye level. Now you're talking eye level, directly at eye level, and I'm like, hey, Royce, come get over here, come back, Royce, because I could see what was going. And he looked back at me, and he looked at the bottles and went, and the whole lot came off the shelf. Oh. So my point being is, like, yes, he's a rascal, but my point being, it's eye level. He's seeing what's at eye level, and in a sense, you're absolutely right. We look at things this high. You go into a supermarket, they put it up for our height.
They pay to put it up at their height.
Right.
They pay. So there's money even made on where your product is put on the shelf. Money from the first instant that you even deal with a brand is done in the decision of where you're even going to put it.
Right. Well, I mean, you talk about the food industry. They're very sophisticated marketing that affects and influences children's brand preferences.
Big time.
It affects their purchase requests, their diets. But for children, families, and society, the impact, it can be devastating because it even though they're sophisticated in that, childhood obesity has become a public health crisis.
It is devastating. We're still creating the image of a girl as being a tiny little waist, and I mean, they're all clones. You can take the heads off of every single one of these princesses, and they all have the same body. And in reality, none of these cultures have the same body.
Yeah, I know.
None of them. There's the Frozen are the people in where are they in Holland or something, and Pocahontas is in the middle of the jungle. They all have the same body. Like, wow, they must all have the same. What, do they all have the same trainer? I mean, there's every single one of those princes is generically looking at, like, that's the vision of perfection. Like, that's the way you're supposed to look. Everybody's attracted to that person. So yeah, they're already programming.
Okay, here, listen to this one. Before we bring John Beale in, I've got to tell this story. Does this seem creepy to any of our listeners? At February's Toy Fair in 2015 in New York City, Mattel unveiled Hello Barbie, the Wi-Fi connected doll that uses an embedded microphone to record children's voices and other nearby conversations. But when Mattel releases the $74.99 toy in late fall, things will get a little creepy, I think. Hello Barbie transmits the recordings over the internet to cloud servers. Mattel's technology partner ToyTalk processes the audio with voice recognition software. Mattel says it will use this information to push data back to children through Barbie's built-in speaker. Georgetown University law professor Angela Campbell says, if I had a young child, I'd be very concerned that in my child's intimate conversations with her doll were being recorded and analysed. In Mattel's demo, Barbie asks many questions that would elicit a great deal of information about a child, her interests, and her family. This information will be of great value to advertisers and be used to market unfairly to children. The companies say that they will obtain parental permission to capture a child's voice, but that won't necessarily protect children from exploitation. Children's well-being and healthy development demand relationships and conversations with real people and real friends. Children do not need commercially manufactured messages artificially created after listening in on anyone within range of Mattel's microphones. I agree with that.
It's terrifying.
I agree with that, and I actually was talking.
It's terrifying.
I was talking with another actor, a very vocal, fantastic man. He was discussing President Bush's campaign to actually capture children's. It's almost brain mapping. They call it brain mapping, but in a sense, it's capturing everything about them.
Yeah,
it captures what they like, what they don't like, when they go to school, how they eat, what they listen to, all that stuff. So therefore, as your children are growing up, you have an entire consensus as to what they're doing. So you're basically programming or knowing exactly what to feed them.
I mean, I know personally, you don't even like that. I don't even like that for myself. So I could not imagine allowing that platform to exist for children who are like under. There is no right age for that type of. I mean, you can't solicit to children anyways. So now all of a sudden, how is it a viable choice to access them through a toy that you know is literally the highest selling
marketing.
doll
It's called
in
marketing.
the world.
It's profit. It's
in the
marketing.
world.
Exactly.
You're going to start having dolls around you that you don't even know which one really is listening to you and which one isn't listening to you, because it's going to be so one of a product. It's a scary reality. I don't think that marketer, anybody has any business on that platform with children.
Let's bring John Bealey in. We'll change it up a little bit to our hero of the week. John Bealey, are you there at the moment?
I am. Good morning, Adrian. Good morning, Ethan. And Rick Mora, welcome back to Peace Fund Radio. We're happy to have you back again.
Thank you, Joe.
So John, how are you doing? Everything good?
Everything is good. Everything is good. Busy and good. Adrian had mentioned early in the show that Rick was on our show last year. If you go to our blog.thepeacefund.org, click on any of the episode links on our episode archive, and you can find Rick's episode on April 23rd of 2014. It was just about a year ago. It's an excellent conversation about autism, the importance of how it is viewed by the medical community and affected families, and also how it's viewed by society at large. If you have a child with autism in your family, you have got to go back and listen to this. It was an absolutely excellent episode.
I'm going to have to agree with you, John. I actually do like to listen to that episode. And I get a lot of positive feedback from it as well.
And if you want to find out more about our guest, you can find out about his photography, filmography, and philanthropy at rickmora.com. He's on Facebook at Native Rick Mora and also on Twitter at Native Rick Mora. So check him out.
Check him out.
Yes.
I'm marketing for you, Rick.
Thank you. Put me at eye level. Just keep me at eye level.
So, John, what do you have for us? I hear you've got a hero of the week for us as well.
We do. Very quickly, I wanted to share an update that Adrian had sent to me from Melina Gay, who was on our show in February, talking about the subject of bullying, and her short film Clarissa's Gift, which is about bullying. We also had her co-star Nene Kirby on our show in February as well. She just wanted to share that Clarissa's Gift was chosen as an official selection at the 6th Annual Soul for Real Film Festival in Forestville, Maryland last week. And it has also been chosen as an official selection of the Goa Film Festival being held in India in June, and the Las Vegas Black Film Festival, which will be held in April the 23rd to the 26th in Las Vegas. She says, thanks to all who supported and blessed this amazing film that is touching lives worldwide. Dreams do come true when you are bold enough to believe. So congratulations, Milena, on your film finding an audience for such an extremely important subject. And that also brings us to our Hero of the Week segment, which every week we highlight a young person who has done something amazing for other young people. This is an incredible story, as we always have. Our hero this week is Ellen Chilemba. She is a 20-year-old student of art and international relations at Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley, Massachusetts. But in the Republic of Malawi, in southeastern Africa, where she was born and raised, Ellen has already been a teacher, a mentor, and a savior to young women who live in fear of being swallowed up by cultural and societal traditions that prevent them from realizing their own dreams. When Ellen was just 16, she met another girl her own age who had already been married to a much, much older man for several years, who had already borne this man several children, and who lived in absolute poverty with zero hope of ever escaping it. Ellen said that this girl had no spark in her heart, no light left in her eyes. It was as if she had already lived a dozen lifetimes and her life was already finished. And unfortunately, such stories are very common in Malawi, where 65% of the population lives on less than $1 a day. And even though some families can afford minimal education for their young children, most cannot afford to finance them through secondary school. And thus you have the dowry system. Girls as young as 12 years old are sold by their families to much older men to become mothers and housewives whose own daughters and granddaughters will end up in that same cycle of early marriage, early motherhood, minimal, if any, schooling, and poverty, poverty, poverty. Many 12 and 13-year-old girls are so terrified of being doomed to this cycle, because they know what's coming, that they run away from home and try to set out on their own. But since they're not able to fend for themselves, they quickly fall into prostitution, which leads to sexual slavery, death, and disease. Now, Ellen was lucky enough to have had a good education, but even young women as focused and as driven as she was can still face a lifetime of uphill battles from banks that don't want to give women business loans, and a society that's not conducive to female advancement. So Ellen decided that if the banks wouldn't help, and if society wasn't conducive to women being able to make their own way, then she would do something about it herself. She wanted to create an organization that could tackle this issue head on, and the first thing that she needed to do is figure out what she would call it. Now, the Chichewa language is spoken by 15 million people in southern Africa, and Ellen chose the word Tiwale because of its positive connotation, Tiwale. As she researched the origin of the word, she found out that in some dialects it meant enlightenment, in some of the dialects it meant empowerment. She decided that she would use that word to mean both. And at age 17, she secured a series of grants from various international organizations to found the Tiwale organization in the Malawi capital city of Lilongwe. And you can find a link to her website on her Facebook page at facebook.com/Tiwale.org. That's Tiwaleorg. Tiwale is staffed and operated by young women whose mission statement is this: we are empowered young women overcoming poverty by creating sustainable ventures that transform our communities into flourishing hubs of young entrepreneurs. We aim to support and lead innovative and enterprising young women to fulfill their potentials. Now, how do they do that? They sponsor young women who want to go back to school. They put together graphic design workshops, sewing workshops to encourage young women who dream of being fashion designers. They're building a poultry farm that's going to be maintained by young women who have attended their various programs over the years. They also work with groups of young women to teach them entrepreneurial skills and self-development ideals like confidence and leadership. They challenge every girl who comes through their program to form a business plan for her dream profession. And then they help those girls secure interest-free capital to get their businesses started. Now, so far, Ellen has helped more than 40 women establish and sustain their own businesses in Malawi. Now, when you think about, how long, the culture has treated women in this way, to say that there are 40 businesses being operated by women, that's like saying there are 40 ice cubes that are doing just fine floating around in a volcano. I mean, it's that difficult for women to get ahead in this culture. But Ellen has helped 40 women sustain businesses. And things are growing so rapidly that she thinks that number will reach 300 women within 5 years. So our deepest thanks go out to Ellen Chilemba for turning the word Tiwale into a way to enlighten and empower the young women of Malawi to be as successful and as inspiring as she has been. And that's why, Ellen, we have chosen you as our latest Peace Fund Radio Hero of the Week.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think it also goes, we were talking earlier in the show regarding about how world has to change through different ideas and different, getting the congressman who's 80 years old off, it's the same thing as getting the tribal leader off these age-old traditions, if you like, or ways of being that are ancient in thinking, because we as a people are becoming more enlightened, I believe, to a degree, or there is much more of a consciousness to it. But so we have to change our ways to accept that, whereas before we were dealing with primeval or primordial anyway, types of behavior. So
if there wasn't so much advancement in technology and in mindset, then it would be okay to say we have a system developed by a foundation of people who were initially in charge of establishment. I mean, and I can't say their way is wrong, but their way isn't working anymore with how our society is growing and changing with the advancements and the needs and the demands, because now we are very conscious. We're socially conscious. We're emotionally conscious. We're so much more aware, and I mean, like 90% of those people, I mean, seriously, probably aren't even on a computer. Like the ways that they set or don't even incorporate anything that has to do with technology. So, and that's one of the big things that Ellen wants to do moving forward. Even though she's currently a double major at a college in the United States, she's still running her programs and things from afar. And her goal is, when she's finished with college, is to go back to her hometown and to bring some of this new technology and these new ideas to help increase tourism and help get the culture moving forward. And it's really exciting what she has planned. And we talk about this on our show every week, that you listen to the stories of these young people, what these kids are doing. And I honestly feel like, over the next few years, as we have educational advancements, medical advancements, cultural advancements, I truly believe that the names of some of these heroes of the week that we've talked about on the show will be attached to those advancements. It's very exciting.
I agree, John. I think we are living in an exciting time. I think the more we do about it, the more we voice it, the better the situations will come. I do want to again. As normal happens on the show, we are close to running out of time. But I want to bring you a couple of other things regarding marketing on children. There's another questionable product that I want to bring to the audience right now. Right now we are, and I'm going to talk about this as well, because we urge our kids, or parents are urged by marketing, etc., to urge our kids to watch educational, and I'm also probably prone to it as well. Let's put them in front of an educational television show,
you justify it
or something on a tablet, like on an iPad or some sort of. But if that isn't bad enough, AT&T has partnered with Baby First to introduce a first ever second screen experience for infants and toddlers. The new Baby First TV Uverse app encourages babies to use the iPad while watching TV. So you got two things to do it. Wow, aren't you good? The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time for children under 2, where there's no evidence that even one screen benefits babies. Marketing a second one is unconscionable. Now, why do parents buy into this? It's simple. They're receiving confusing and inaccurate information. And I'm going to actually give this information to you right now, because the claim always seems to be way too good to be true. Park your infant in front of a video, and in no time, he or she will be talking and getting smarter and reading and much better than your neighborhood's kid and all that blah, 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 blah. You got Baby Einstein, Brainy Baby series, all that stuff. Lovely. But in actual fact, it may actually delay language development in toddlers, and some screen media education makes claims unsubstantiated by research. 56% of parents of young children believe that baby videos are good for children's development. Oh, no, it's not. The most common reason parents give for infant and toddler screen time is that it is beneficial to children's brain development. But in a study at University of Washington, the research found that every hour per day spent watching baby DVDs, infants learned 6 to 8 fewer new vocabulary words than babies who never watched the DVDs.
It's a parenting issue, Adrian. People don't.
It's not. It's a marketing issue.
Well,
it's because what ends up happening, the marketing, we don't research the marketing that's given to us.
I believe that goes a step before that. In that, being a parent today has taken another step towards a different area of conversation.
It has, totally.
Parents aren't being parents. They're relying on many other resources to help parent for them. Parents are way divided. There's a lot of expectation, a lot of monetary demands. There's a lot of going on of life around parents these days. And because of this advancement in technology, it has even taken one more step into releasing a parent from their viable responsibility to parent, to teach the child, to have an interactive conversation, because that's how the children learn. And when the parents aren't talking, the children are just reading a screen. They're not learning, and that's why the impact of learning less when you put a child in front of a screen to teach them. It's that interactive process. Parents have to go back to old. That's the one thing that does have to go back to old school. This
particular thing says these basic products have a detrimental effect on babies 8 to 16 months old. That old, I mean, or that young if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the age where language skills really start forming.
It's when you need to have the most
exactly. And the
with
more
your parents.
videos they watch, the less words they actually know. And I know my wife gets asked sometimes. I mean, I watch kids in school. My kids, yes, they watch it. But, we make sure that they're turning it off. They only watch maybe about 40 minutes a day, maybe an hour and a half, sometimes depending on the days, a day. The rest of the time, we put them with other kids. We take them out. We make sure that they do that. You've got to have the time, but you've got to put the time in to do that because, you're looking at this, the more...
If you don't have the time, then you shouldn't be having a kid.
Exactly.
That's the reality.
Exactly.
If you don't have the time to be a parent, don't become a parent.
And I want to give another mention to this particular research that was done by the University of Washington. It basically says the more videos these kids watch, the fewer they knew, and the babies scored about 10% lower on language skills than infants who had not watched these DVDs. Babies require face-to-face interaction. I'm going to say that again. Babies require face-to-face interaction.
Yes.
They don't get it by watching TV or DVDs.
No. They actually get it by looking at the way your face moves and the way your eyes light up. I mean, there's so much tactile interaction that stimulates the learning process besides just hearing the oral.
I talked at the beginning of the show about going into this funding thing. The thing is, a lot of time people have lost a lot of money in going into certain deals because they don't do their research correctly. And in this particular thing, what you're doing is you're creating a society of kids at that level that are not taught correctly. They don't have the level of understanding
process,
and it hinders their emergent literacy.
Correct.
So you've got to be aware of that, and that's why we talk about this on the show.
I could talk till I'm blue on this. I have a huge experience with children and the learning process. So I mean, it is something near and dear to my heart. I mean, truly, the impact of parental interaction with their child right now is so crucial and so sensitive, and it does need a huge amount of attention being placed on it. The campaign should be tune out and spend more time with your child.
Kids, yeah.
Tune out and tune into your child.
Maybe we should hashtag that.
There we go.
Listen,
we've got
2 minutes left. I've got to give one quick shout out to an organisation that is actually working on this campaign for commercial-free childhood. That's www.commercialfreechildhood.org. Reclaiming childhood from corporate marketeers. They work for the rights of children to grow up and the freedom for parents to raise them without being undermined by commercial interests. They advocate for policies to protect children. I'm reading from their mission statement here, to protect children from harmful marketing and promote commercial free time and space for kids. So check them out, please. Rick, thank you for joining us. I know this has been a whirlwind show again. I don't know where the time just kind of disappears on us.
I love to be with my peeps. You guys have the most beautiful souls. This is what, for me, it's all about, Adrian. I think you're doing a wonderful thing for children. I think you're doing a wonderful thing for everybody when they can tune in and listen to your perspective on.
Thank you. And Ethan, I know you've been quiet in this because we've been like totally, railroading the conversation kind of. Look, he looks totally, He's like, oh, when is this show over? When will these guys stop
That's not
talking?
what I'm thinking. That's not what I'm thinking. But thank you.
John, thank you for bringing us all that
John.
information.
My honor as always.
Yeah, and next time we'll be able to talk a little bit longer. Thank you to all of you that have supported the Peace Fund. Remember, go to the Peace Fund, www.thepeacefund.org, as people will call it. And we will come back to you next week. In closing, a quote by Oscar Wilde. Nowadays, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll see you again.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.